What's going on, everybody? Got Eric in the front this time, Perry there in the back. We got to go see Ad Astra, which is the biggest space film I think coming out this year.
Yeah, probably.
We usually have a nice handful of them every year, but I think Ad Astra is probably the biggest one. And I think Eric was probably the least excited to see this film.
I really when I heard that this was another fucking drama space movie, I was like, oh, here we go again. I'm so sick of these.
I think I was probably the most excited for it, just because. I mean, that being said, I didn't have high expectations for it though. Like, I also kind of thought that it was just kind of gonna be average. So that was kind of how I went into this film. But, you know, normally I actually really love space films when they're done right. Like, I think they can be absolutely stunning. And, you know, so for that reason, I was, you know, looking forward to it. But there were also some subs that really wanted me to get a review out for it. So that's also another thing. I don't know about Perry. You know, how excited were you for this film, you would say?
I wasn't really excited, to be honest. Like, I wanted to watch Villains a lot more than I wanted to watch this movie. Mm-hmm. But coming out of it, like, I'm really glad we saw it.
Me too.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can all say that we enjoyed this film.
Definitely.
I think
for sure.
I think we have our different levels of how much we enjoyed it, but we definitely came out like pretty happy that we saw it, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I guess I'll start by saying that, you know, as far as the direction goes, oh wait, by the way, written and directed by James Gray, right? That's his name? Mm-hmm. Written and directed by James Gray. He did The Lost City of Z and a few others that I can't recall. But The Lost City of Z was a film that I had my eye on and really wanted to see, but I just didn't get around to it, unfortunately. But coming out of this film, guys, as far as, like, the direction, I thought, like, it was really well done. I mean, the cinematography is absolutely stunning, pretty much all throughout this film, and you know, on top of the camera work just being really good, I mean, the production design and the color palette in this is also it's just like incredibly pleasing to look at the entire film.
Yeah.
Pretty much almost every scene that you look at, there's some sort of interesting, you know, color palette going on that it's just really captivating. And, you know, even like the score and the sound design I thought was really well done.
The sound design was great.
Oh,
yeah, and just the way that, you know, it was all directed, I was just really stunned by it because I was like, wow, I was much more engaged in this film than I really expected to be honest. And I guess, you know, apart from that, I think the strongest act of this film, in my opinion, is the third act, because the third act is just, not only is it emotional, and I didn't expect it to actually, I didn't cry or anything, but I was like somewhat on the verge of it. Like I definitely felt something emotionally powerful there in the third act. And by the way, Tommy Lee Jones is also in this movie. By the way, the full cast is Brad Pitt, Tommy Lee Jones, and Donald Sutherland. I think those are the three big names in this.
Yeah.
But Tommy Lee Jones in the third act of this, I really bought his character.
Me too.
Definitely.
I was feeling kind of his own insanity that he was going through, and his own just depressive state that he was feeling. And yeah, and you know, on top of that, Brad Pitt and his whole arc and his theme that was going on through the entire film, I thought was also really well handled and really powerful. He has a very subdued you know, job to do in this film, but it's in the moments that he's kind of like letting it leak out, and just because he just can't control it because he's a human being, mm-hmm. You really feel those moments. Like, you really do feel it, and it's all within his acting too, because like there's moments where it's all like you really feel the emotion because of like how his face is twitching in a certain way, and just how his eyes are slowly watering up. And it's just, I don't know, I think like as far as like a really subdued performance, like he really knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
I really was sold by his performance throughout the entire film. That being said, I do have a few issues with this film, despite how much I actually enjoyed it. This film, basically, I mean, there are certain patches of it that are stronger than others, but basically Brad Pitt's character's thoughts are narrated throughout the entire film. And to me, that was it was honestly mostly bothersome in the first act, because I feel like in the first act there was just too much. In the first act, it seemed like it was really mostly there just to kind of spoon feed the audience some sort of like thematic conveyance. And if it's not that, then it's just spoon feeding some sort of information about his backstory or somebody else's character. And it didn't feel like, I mean, it was effective and to a certain degree, but it felt too much like it was just trying to, tell the audience stuff. And that was a bit bothersome for me. But to be honest, as the film progressed, into the second act and especially in the third act, the narration seemed a bit more appropriate, and it definitely it wasn't as bothersome for me. But I still have to be honest. There was some aggravating parts in the first act with the narration that I was just like why? Like, why did we have to have Brad Pitt say that thing? Because it was already well done, and I felt like sometimes it would just water the scene down a bit, and it was just, I don't know, it was a little bit, I don't know, I wish that it maybe just didn't do that, because it would have been a bit more thought-provoking if he hadn't done that. But, and also, I guess another small negative that I have with this is that I don't hate the ending to this. I actually like it. I don't hate it, but I feel like it maybe could have been a bit greater if it wasn't so happy-go-lucky, because it was just really, really like wrapped up in a bow tie, everything's good now kind of thing. And, I don't know, with the film with this kind of emotional power to it, I was maybe hoping for something that wasn't just so Hollywood, and it came off kind of Hollywoodish, even though I think it worked well for his character. Not to give too much away, but I think like the way that his character theme progressed, and especially in the ending, I like how it shows his character evolve at the end. But I'll talk more about it later, but with that being said, I'll open up the floor to somebody else if they want to give their general thoughts on it.
Yeah, I feel like personally I'm probably the one who enjoyed this movie the most, surprisingly, like considering that I was the least excited for it. I'm happy that for once I'm the person with like the least complaints. Not saying I'm always the one with the most complaints, but sometimes I feel like I have like so many weird complaints that you guys don't share. I'll go with my complaints first for this film. I feel like there was a few scenes that felt kind of out of place that I'll just say were a little action heavy, and I didn't really know if it was necessary for the plot, and it felt just a little weird, a little out of place for this like this is a very melancholic film. Like, this is probably one of the most melancholic space movies I've seen besides Solaris.
It's existential too a bit, honestly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's existential, not as much as Solaris,
No,
but it
Not at all.
but it definitely has like this just very like somber tone too.
You're
like,
very bleak sometimes. You're just like, shit.
Right.
What is life?
yeah, and also I agree with Carlos a little bit in terms of the ending. I wish it was a little bit more bittersweet. Like, I didn't want it to have like a sad ending, and it could have had a sad ending, but it did feel like it was a little too nicely wrapped up in a bow. I don't know how I would prefer to end it. I'm not going to spoil it, of course, but it did feel a little too convenient or too wrapped. I don't really mind the narration because I felt like it worked for Brad Pitt's character, since he's such a stoic person who doesn't really want to express his true feelings, and he just bottles it up all in his head. But some things were a little too spoon-feedy, like Carlos mentioned, how he mentioned that there was like a really nicely conveyed scene in the film, and it was just a little like on the nose when it came to like Brad Pitt's like narration.
It's like, hey, this is what this is about, if you didn't know.
And I love the scene. Like, it's such a little scene, and it probably people will like pass it along as if it was nothing, but I really do feel like it conveyed a lot perfectly. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I feel like this is like a slightly dystopian setting.
Yeah.
Like this is for sure set in the future. Like, there's no debate about that.
No.
But I also feel like it's a little dystopian, not as much as like a 1984 or like a Brazil.
Yeah.
But like, I'll say this, there's like a lot of times in the film where Brad Pitt has to take like this psychological test, because it's just like, if you're the least bit emotionally compromised or in any way, then you basically
can't go and do your mission shit.
Yeah, it's really inhuman in a way.
Yeah.
And this movie doesn't really focus on like the general public a lot. more so just like the astronauts and everything. But I still felt like the setting was pretty interesting enough to carry its own thing, and that's probably one of my favorite things in the movie. Also, everybody's delivery. Like, I get this is like a melancholic movie, but everybody had like such a subdued way of conveying their lines, not even just Brad Pitt.
Yeah, like most of the actual dialogue,
Yeah.
like I almost don't have any problem with any of the actual dialogue in the film. Like I thought a lot of that was conveyed really nice.
Yeah, and we already touched upon that it looks gorgeous because it's super gorgeous, and I like the score. It wasn't like super in your face. It's not a show stealer, but I love the score and the sound design too.
Hell yeah. The aesthetics were just like breathtaking in my opinion overall.
Yeah, they were.
All right, Perry. Back there chilling.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed this film. I think the narration bothered me a lot more than it did Carlos and Eric. But overall, like, despite the narration, the third act is the strongest. And a big part of that is because there's not really much narration in the third act, almost any at all, actually. But I felt like the third act had like some pretty obvious like symbolism. Even without the narration, there was one part of the film that had really obvious symbolism. But I don't think it took too much away from my enjoyment of the film, and I don't think it killed the third act for me. Just like the ending that felt very Hollywood, I don't think it killed the third act for me. I was really shocked because I'm not the biggest Tommy Lee Jones fan, but he, like, you don't get a lot of Tommy Lee Jones in this movie, but he's fantastic from what you get from him. Like, he really stepped up to the plate. And Brad Pitt, like, I was really shocked because I knew going into this film that the visual effects and the cinematography were going to be, you know, breathtaking. But Brad Pitt, I think he gave a really solid performance.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he has this under his belt and, you know, Cliff Booth and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think it's gonna, like, I'm glad this movie exists because people start giving Brad Pitt his due, because I feel like he's a very underrated actor. Yeah, he chooses a lot of crap, but then he chooses something like this, and he'll really, like, shock you, you know, he'll really blow you away with his acting style, even if it is really subdued. I gotta say, I've already touched upon it, but the production design is incredible in this film.
Yeah.
I was completely blown away. There's not a second of this film where I felt like I was just watching like a green screen or anything like that. I felt like I was in space the entire film.
Yeah, it was completely like immersive.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Especially that third act. Sometimes like I felt emotions like, oh, I feel like I'm gonna float.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, holy fuck.
It was
great.
very unnerving too, because Brad Pitt really, like, he didn't know who to trust, because Spacecom, you know, him being an astronaut, he couldn't even trust his own people.
Yeah.
And it's very nerve-wracking to think he can't trust his own people, but at the same time, he holds a lot of, like, hatred. Well, not hatred, but, you know, like, kind of frustration with his father, you know, for all of their relationship and everything his father did to him. And I love how the cosmic radiation in the film, it was a reflection of, like, the rising tension of, you know, like, as Brad Pitt got closer and closer to his mission, you know, it was like the cosmic radiation was becoming more and more of a threat.
Yeah, one thing that I really also liked about this film was that it wasn't afraid to, like, point out the loss of, like, of humanity, I guess would be the word, in terms of, like, how the system operates, because, like, you know, you have NASA and you have the just the whole, like, government body, and the way that they themselves don't value human life in a way, and, you know, everything, they kind of expect everybody to be fucking robots in order to actually do their job. And I just liked that kind of, like, social commentary that it had on that as well, and just in terms of, like, the kind of pressures that even, you know, I don't know if I'm maybe, like, reading into this too much, but like maybe that it does have something to say about how like men are always pressured and always expected to be these kind of like people who kind of just have to suck it up and not feel certain feelings and emotions in order to do these dangerous jobs and stuff.
I completely agree with that. I think that's a big part of what the film was trying to say.
Yeah, and then it also had a subtle commentary on not allowing women to do certain things either. Like,
Right.
And it didn't feel spoon fed. It didn't feel like it was trying to hammer away at that point. But there was certain things in this film that it was like showing you how the system is still like discriminating against women for certain rights of power, but then also expecting men to not have any emotion at all. And that's just and it told these things in a way that wasn't, again, like it didn't. Only maybe somebody who was really looking closely can come away. Can actually come away from the film saying that. And I don't know. To me, that's for a Hollywood film to be able to convey something like that without like hammering over the head with it. I thought was pretty impressive to me.
There was one scene in the film, at first, like, I had mixed feelings about it because it really caught me off guard and I kind of found it jarring at first. But the more I thought about it, the more I liked it because it was, like, some of the best visual storytelling in the film. And especially since there were definitely a couple of scenes that felt really out of place. There was like an action sequence in this film that felt like it was right out of Star Wars. It felt very Star Wars-esque.
It's crazy because the only problem I had with that scene really is again the narration. Like it was just like another moment where it was like the audience couldn't figure it out, so let's have Brad Pitt's mind explain what's happening. Right. And you can say like, well, it feels out of place for the film, and I totally get that. I'm not gonna really argue too much against that. But like it didn't like stick out too much for me. Like it wasn't like something that felt like it was a totally different movie or anything. It just felt like, because in my mind I had to remember, this is taking place in a dystopian future setting, so I'm just rolling with these things that I'm not used to seeing. And that was one of those moments where I was like, holy shit, like we're in a totally different time right now. And I thought it was pretty cool overall. It's just when Brad Pitt was narrating what was happening was when I was like, it just kind of took away a little bit from that scene for me.
That scene was very well directed and shot, but it felt a little out of place, and like I was like, oh, we're going here, I guess we're gonna do this like action thing for a movie that's not like an action movie at all. Like This is a very story character driven science film.
And it's interesting because, like, with the first act, like, you don't really get to know too much about Brad Pitt in the first act. So and I was kind of afraid at first because it's like, I don't even feel like I know this character. How is anything that happens in this film going to have any emotional weight? But as the film progresses, like, you really start to get a feel for his character. And the more the film progresses, the more it, like, weighs on you. Like, the more emotional weight it brings. And it kind of just, like, boils over in the third act, and it really hits you. I would say a gut punch, even though I wouldn't say I didn't cry in the movie, but I was definitely, like, pretty close to tears.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that.
Yeah.
Well, shit, I guess let's go and give our ratings on this. If you want, we can go into small spoilers. We're not going to go into much, but there is one scene that I just wanted to talk about. So after the rating, we'll get into some small spoilers. I don't want this video to be as long as the M Fabric review.
No.
Right. That was us ranting about whatever.
But, so yeah, that being said, this honestly, guys, this film impressed me much more than I was expecting. I was much more engaged by this film, more impressed by it, even through its whole like thematic approach. I was not expecting. It's a Hollywood movie. Sometimes they're really lacking in that department. Right. But I thought they really nailed it. And again, visually stunning fucking movie. The production design is really fucking good, off the charts. And some people say, well, it's Hollywood, it has to be good. Yeah, but there's plenty of Hollywood movies that don't put this much effort into their design, and I have to give it some credit for that. Brad Pitt gives an awesome performance in this. Tommy Lee Jones also really brung it in this film, and I mean brought it. I guess that's the fucking right word. He really brought it in this film, and he was really effective. And it was also a really emotional film, which I did not expect. And I felt like I was in space for 2 hours, and that's really effective for me. And Yeah, again, the only small issues I have with its narration in some parts and the ending, like the actual ending of this. I wasn't a huge fan on, but I don't hate it or anything. But overall, I think this is a really solid space flick, and I think it's like miles better than like The Martian or some shit like that.
My God, I hate that movie.
This, so to give my rating, I'll give Ad Astra an 8.5 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10.
Oh, nice.
It was a really strong film, and it really impressed me in ways that I did not expect. So,
Yeah, I agree. I feel like this is very, very solid, very strong, pretty much in almost every aspect. Maybe, yeah, not. There's not everything blew me away, but everything was really strong. I feel like what did blow me away was the cinematography and the sound design and a lot of the technical stuff. And the like I said, yeah, the writing was pretty solid. There's not a lot to really say, I guess, about this film. I don't feel like you can go on and on and on about it. But overall, I still enjoyed it. I don't know if I'd really recommend it to people who don't want to sit through like a long, boring, like space movie, because it's just a lot of characters talking, of course.
yeah.
But I'm kind of torn with my rating. I'll give it a soft 8 out of 10.
Nice.
That's where I'm gonna go.
Well, see, I had a feeling that we maybe enjoyed it at a similar level.
I agree with you. Okay, we are on the same level then.
I guess it leaves me, and I enjoyed it the least out of although I still really enjoyed it. There were definitely some logic issues I didn't get to, but it's one of those films where it's like you're just so immersed in like the all the technical aspects, the cinematography, the visual effects, the sound design, where you can kind of like overlook the logic issues with the film. Like it doesn't bother you as much because you're just paying attention. You're like, wow, that looks so breathtaking. But with that being said, I'm gonna give Ad Astra a 7.5 out of 10, or 7.5 out of 10, however you want to say it.
I'd say that's a pretty fair grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, like in the first 2 acts of this, I was thinking like a 7.
Me too.
But
yeah, exactly.
But that third act blew, like I was like, wow, like that was really strong third act. So
That's what I was thinking,
like,
too.
fuck it, this is either 8 or 8.5. So and just me talking about it, it just made me want to give it that tiny little extra 0.5 points on it. So I was like 8.5 for me. But
I don't do the decimals for my own reasons, so I just give it a soft 8. It's closer to a 7 than a 9. I'll just say that.
well, so I'm gonna get into some spoilers really quick. If y'all want to like say if y'all have something specific you want to talk about after this, then that's fine. But there was this one scene in particular, I believe in the second act of the film, where Brad Pitt's character has to go on like a Mayday mission to go and help somebody, and basically the big climax of the scene is that he stumbles upon his captain having his face eaten by a ape on the ship, because apparently the ship was like a biomedical experiment place or whatever. So there's this ape like eating this astronaut's face off, and he has to like kill it with his like laser gun or whatever. But just like the imagery and that situation of that was just really thematically satisfying. There was something really thematically satisfying about that.
Yeah, I
just
agree.
seeing like how far we've come to where like we've evolved from apes, but yet like we're in space at peak humanity, still getting our faces ripped off by a fucking ape.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, it was just really cool to see that. And like as I was watching it, I was like, this is a little odd, and I don't know how to exactly feel about it, but like after it was done, I was like, that was actually
It was
really
so
stunning
thematic,
and cool.
though.
Yeah, exactly,
Mhm.
exactly.
To me, like, I think it represented, like, even though we've evolved so much to the point where we can go to space and everything, I still think it's like humans, like, it's trying to say humans delude themselves that there's something more than primates when they're really
like
not.
we're so arrogant, you know? It
Right.
just shows that, and I don't know, it's just, I haven't really seen something like that in a space movie. I mean, I have, because like, you know, 2001 touches on that kind of stuff, but
Right.
like to see it done in this way was just like, I don't know, I was really surprised by the film like this, you know, doing something like that. So I was like, that was really fucking cool for me.
Yeah, it was definitely a commentary on, like, mankind's arrogance.
Yeah.
And how we we measure our evolution by, how greater our technology becomes, because we think as our technology gets greater and more advanced that we're becoming more evolved, when actuality, I think there's kind of a de-evolution going on with humanity.
Yeah, because we always equate technology with knowledge.
Right,
But
exactly.
sometimes over-reliance on technology makes you less wise and less smarter sometimes. So I like
Exactly.
that. But yeah, that's what does anybody else want to throw in a spoiler? I don't know.
I don't have one off the top of my head, but I think Perry said he wanted to bring one up if he hasn't already.
Do you want to bring one up, Perry, or?
No, I think I'm good.
Yeah. All right then.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
that's that then. Yeah, I gotta say I was pleasantly surprised by this film. I really enjoyed it. This might be something I might actually even buy on Blu-ray when it comes out, because it's just I would like to watch this on my TV, because I mean I have a pretty big widescreen. It's not the biggest, but you could watch a space movie on it and still be like, wow, that looks really fucking good. So,
Yeah, I wouldn't mind watching this again.
So yeah, but yeah, I guess that's all of our thoughts, guys. So we're going to wrap it up. If you really liked what we had to say about Ad Astra, then go ahead and give this video a like and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content. Thank you.